Alright, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
Fruits Basket, Season 2, Episode 21.
Alright, we got a play on our hands.
We do indeed, and the cast is looking glorious. Oh boy.
Quite the flipped script, if you will. We have Yuki being the fairy godmother.
Naturally.
We have Kyo being the prince. Naturally, yes.
Naturally.
And then Hajime being Cinderella, because fuck yeah.
Yeah, it's just about perfect, and the only way it can get perfecter is that somehow Toru is going to have to be the evil stepsister.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Oh goody.
This will be glorious.
And then the Yuki protection stand squad, one of them has to be the evil stepmother.
Indeed. Yep.
It all backfired. But meanwhile, through the last episode, we had some really good stuff with the student council.
We did.
Yeah.
That was pretty wonderful.
We get to really see how Yuki has learned kind of to be not just friendly with them, but also like there for them.
Right.
You know, we learned a little bit about some backstories.
We did. And that explains a lot of, the dynamics that we'd seen in the student council before now. But it was also something where, hey, you don't need to promise not to do it again. Just help us understand why it's happening.
Sure.
Right? That just goes to show how much Yuki's grown, because that is not the kind of thing that he would have been able to know to say, back in season 1, probably.
True. Yeah. And then Yuki being in this place where he kind of knows kind of the direction he wants to take things in, but there's some things that he needs to let go of, and one of them is what he's wanted from Toru.
Right, and the episode didn't even tell us what it was.
Nope.
Which is interesting.
But there's been some very obvious hints at the idea that Toru kind of represents basically this idyllic kind of other reflection of the kind of the princely state that he would falsely kind of assume. So if she's basically that other side of that, or even like some kind of just kind of support, basically kind of structure for him.
Yeah, more of a not that he would see her in such a utilitarian way, but in some ways a tool that is helping him, right, rather than actually the person of Toru.
Right.
And so, okay, now that he's getting more in touch with the person of Yuki and not the role that he, takes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe he'll be able to interact with other people in a similar way, and with the student council, that's going quite well. So.
Yeah. And okay, if we're going to have now a play where we can see also Toru breaking out of some of the roles that she's kind of been putting herself into, of this kind of overt positivity, but maybe having to tap into her eviler than the devil side.
Yeah. Just talk to Hana and she'll be like, okay, so waves.
Your inner darkness.
Right.
It is within you. I just must unlock it.
Yes, it is not a thing to be feared. It is wonderful and comfortable and calming and reassuring. And
Toru, there are cats around the world, wonderfully beautiful kittens around the world, that die in their mother's arms every year, and you can't do anything about it. And then Toru just suddenly is like, what?
Yeah. Even me just thinking about that, I'm like, oh damn, that's a... Yeah, that is
I just came up with that one on the spot. I was just like...
Well, it was effective.
Yeah, so, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion.
Wow.
Holy shit. This episode just had me just speechless and dumbfounded. So... Yuki, backstory.
Yeah, and the thing is... We got it. But, like, Yuki's backstory was something that, unlike a lot of the other characters, we knew a lot about.
We did know a lot about.
Even if we hadn't seen a lot of the details, we had...
parents.
We knew a good amount, right?
Akito.
Yep. But this is where we get to actually, like, see it.
Yeah, we get to get that gritty, like, internal perspective. And it's painfully slow. Like the fact that like he suffered alone with Akito.
Well, and it didn't.
And it didn't.
It didn't start out.
It didn't start out
right?
that way, which meant that was a betrayal.
Yes,
like
because if it's something where, because of course he would have that dependency on Akito, right? That makes the betrayal even worse.
And his belief that the parents were doing this in a thing that was going to lead to, because they wanted him to make a friend, and because he was going to be like a special friend to Akito,
and like God. That makes sense, right? That you would, like, in a situation where you have something like the Zodiac whole deal, right? You're limited in who you can interact with, and as a kid, you're not going to be able to follow different rules and things like that of like, hey, if you're with someone who's not a member of the Zodiac, that's a girl or a boy or whatever, then make sure that you don't let them like hug you. You know,
you're a kid.
You're a kid, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they would basically be like, okay, let's pick out someone that can be like the playmate for, you know, like for the head of the family, you know, because to make sure that they have a playmate, right? That they can fully be free with, right? But because of how Akito ended up being, and because of how this whole curse dynamic and everything really works, it's not so much of a playmate, is it? Right? Nope. Like the thing is that the parents could have totally had that be a thing where it's just, hey, you go play with Akito, you know, 3 times a week, right? You know, and it's just like you hang out a lot, right?
But no, it was all day, every day.
Right. And it really just gets at the thing that we've seen with other parents where it's that they don't really like to think about the fact that one of their children is a Zodiac.
Yeah.
And most of the time, in some ways, we see where the memory erasing is maybe the more humane approach.
Yep.
Because then it's you don't have to deal with that shit. God. You find some other surrogate parents maybe within the Soma clan, you know, and that's it, right?
Do you guys realize how just completely fucked this situation is? I don't want to talk about the Akito stuff yet, but like, if we just look at this from the standpoint of how does this backstory have a tie-in relevance to the emotional
damage?
The thing that happens at the end, the emotional self-actualization, the reflection, the introspection of Yuki realizing how much Toru not only means to him, but how he's seen her all this time.
Yeah.
And that all the way from the beginning, Yuki's main original source of his pain, his anguish, was the fact that his mother abandoned him.
Right.
Like, and Akito wasn't a negative source for that original.
Yeah, like if Akito, like even if there were things where it's like Akito would get upset, you know, occasionally, right? And
we saw that. The coughing thing.
Right.
Akito was like, "Hey, that's annoying," and then was like, okay," and then picked up the bowl and was like, "It's okay."
Yes, that's behavior that you would want to be basically taught out of them, right? Like, you know, like as kids grow up, but kids do stuff like that all the time. You know, hey, when you make that noise, it bugs me, right?
No, that's just basic communication.
Right, exactly. You know, so you know,
there's nothing problematic about that.
No.
If anything, there's something that's so irrevocably violently wrong with what happened in Akito's situation, which we'll probably get much later. But it wasn't even then that this became a thing of where Yuki was even able to negatively look at his mother this way.
Right.
It's this thing of where, I basically don't have a family anymore other than Akito. And then Akito becomes this source of just deluge of darkness just pouring in on his little flame he's just trying to keep safe and secure. Of course he wants basically a mother, some kind of parental figure that he can basically lean on, cry to, hold on to and stuff. And if Toru is basically the opposite to Akito's darkness, basically, if she's the light to his darkness, then it totally fits that in the darkness that where Yuki could only rely on one person
Right.
And that person was a toxic, just spew forth of, like,
And
all this awful.
And he repeatedly went to mom to basically be like, hey, fix this. I don't like this anymore.
Someone
Can
save
I go
me?
home? Someone save me. And now he also had the stuff with IMA and stuff, but
they were all sources of family
right.
that should have been there for him.
That should have been there for him, but the one that hit the hardest for him as a little kid is the fact that mom wasn't there.
Mom wasn't there, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is heartbreaking, but also wonderfully paralleled to Toru's situation.
Yep.
Because she is the biggest struggle for her is that she doesn't have a mom, right? So she
had a mom.
She had a mom, right? But she doesn't have one now, right? It's she's not here anymore,
and she's not dealing with it in the fullest extent emotionally.
Exactly,
right?
But because she thought so highly of her mom, then she tries to be what her mom was for her. And apparently she did it great, right?
Yep.
But there's the whole you're a person, you have limitations and things like that. You need to be comfortable blowing up at those police officers and being like, I need to find my child.
Kawaii. And like we're talking about hair color, man. I'm like, I'm
height
sure,
and like
description of articles of clothing that she's wearing.
If you can even get specific with the clothes, other than it's cute clothes, and like the most specific thing was that there was like the hairpin or whatever, right?
Right. Right. That's true.
Which is like, okay, cute, we get
that's
it, but
great. Can
there's
you give us
a
like
hairpin.
3 more
All right,
things?
Yeah.
I freaking loved the hysterical, just mom in panic mode.
Oh yeah,
and like I will fucking grab the gang and I will kill anyone that's in my way.
Because like that like even if she had like put away the more violent sides of her backstory, right?
Of course,
right?
No, she'll summon that shit back up.
She'll summon that shit back up.
Mama bear.
Even if it's not to kill somebody, just to find your kid. That totally makes sense. Like I could see her calling up her gang and being like, "Hey girls, like my kid's missing. I can't find her. Oh, all right, we're on it." And
they're like, "Wait, didn't you abandon us? Shut the fuck up and help me, Dad.
Ride or die. Once a member of the crew, always a member of the crew.
I'll do one job, any job.
They throw the tarps off the bikes that are like in the garage for like just mementos because they've all moved on by this point.
She walks into their group or what have you, finds the leader. It's like, I'm taking over for a day. And it's like, no, you fucking aren't. She starts beating the shit out of her. It's like, any objections? And they're like, okay, yeah, sure.
She finds Toru and she's got like a bloody nose and like black eye and stuff.
Toru.
Hey, honey.
You okay? Oh, baby, come here. Anyway, hilarity notwithstanding, that was really great to have a really powerful, positive ending to the episode where having Toru be found by Yuki, but him doing the thing that we had, aptly, we knew guessed that was Yuki.
Yeah, that he was the one who gave her the
guided
hat.
her and gave her the hat.
Yeah. But
having the reveal that the hat was originally Kyo's, that he probably got from Kazuma.
Right. Which is good to know because I think there were some things earlier on where it felt like it was like this could have been either of the boys that gave her the hat.
Which one
but
of the boys was it?
Right, but it's like, no.
Because they both recognize the hat.
They both recognize the hat, but obviously it's Yuki because, like we saw some of the figure, right?
Yeah,
even if it wasn't in detail.
Definitely looked like
obviously
Yuki.
Not Kyo, right?
Right.
Like, there was no red hair.
But the role in which Yuki played here, where he guided her out of, in some ways, the darkness.
Right.
I feel like, in some ways, Jacob, this episode just told us the entire rest of the show.
I think so.
Do you want to run with me on the train?
No. I think
you kind of vibe with me on this.
Yeah, we're already thinking the same thing.
Okay, cool.
So obviously, at some point, Toru is going to have a breaking point, right? And that's probably going to be the one of the final conflicts of the show, right? Whether it's the last one or not, who knows?
And
I think it makes sense for it to be the last one.
What will have happened by then is that Yuki will have separated in his mind this vision of Toru that he's put and attached to her from that, so that he'll be able to understand, oh, wait,
exactly.
I've seen this before with someone else, someone that I don't respect or care or
And
necessarily
there is no way in hell I'm going to let that happen with
to
Toru.
her. Right.
Yeah.
And then he will be there for her like a mother.
Right. But then also on top of that,
Yeah.
it's something where so originally before Yuki decides to run, right? The music is setting up for the fact that he is going to run and that this is
it
going
feels
to be a
triumphant.
triumphant thing. But
He's
if you
gonna be
look
free,
at
yeah.
right, but if you he's going to be free.
But there's also this scary other side of it. Too.
If you look at what he's talking about originally, the thing that pushes him to that point where then he has that breaking moment.
Yeah.
Very similar. Toru's going to have a breaking moment. The stuff that he's talking about is like, I guess it makes sense for me to not exist, right? Like, if I just died, then,
I can be useful.
maybe I could be useful, right?
Right.
Which is pretty fucked up.
He's really scary.
It's very scary. Makes sense given the things that he has been told and believes, right? And that's the thing that I think can be hard when this kind of topic is brought up.
Yeah.
Is that the reason people end up thinking those things and the reason why people end up doing those things is because it makes sense
to them, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, and hence why you need to have the full picture of the world is not just darkness. That right.
Yes.
It's not all light for sure,
No.
but like, and not to go too much into the Kingdom Hearts, like kind of thing of, darkness and light and all of that stuff. Right. Yuki will get the Keyblade and defeat Akito and it'll be fantastic. But here we have a situation where he gets to that low place and then because at that point he has nothing else, right? He has given up on life basically. He might as well try something that is completely and utterly different from the place that he's in. Now, of course, he can't actually survive on his own outside, and he ends up coming back, right? But he ends up realizing that he can choose. He can be useful, and he can choose for himself what his destiny is, right? He is not beholden to Akito. He's not beholden to those horrible people that are called by others his family.
Yeah.
Like it's
well said.
He is the master of his own destiny, and then he goes and he strikes out, and hey, what do you know? World's not that bad after all, right?
Yeah. There's mothers out there that care about their kids. There's
Yep.
kids out there who very much are lost and you can help them.
Exactly.
There's people out there that are dealing with the exact same kind of situations you are where they need someone else beside them. It's not necessarily to the same scale, but you can be there without even necessarily having them know who you are, speak to them,
right,
or even touch them.
Yep. Like it's
it's just
this is one of those things that I feel like almost goes into like that like Disney storybook level of like the
magic of it.
The magic of love basically.
Yes.
Because think about the sequence of events that caused this to happen.
Right.
Yuki was being abused like crazy, right? As a result of that, and him getting to the point where he's contemplating if it would be better if he just died, he then, because of that, is able to then find someone who's lost and help them. That would not have happened if he had not been in that low place, right? Because then he wouldn't have run away, right?
Right.
So
serendipitous encounter,
right?
Yep.
Not that it makes the things that Akito did good by any means. But it's something where in the midst of that, you never know where, even amidst a world of pitch darkness, right?
Yeah.
Some light can shine through.
Yep.
And it can
doesn't
shine
have to
through.
come from the perfect
Exactly.
being of purest light
Nope.
with her
It can-
perfect, purest, wholest intentions.
It can come indirectly or like unintentionally from the very thing that's causing the darkness, right? The thing that is making your life hell, right?
Yep.
And then he's able to find her, and it's great, and he is able to lead her back to Toru's mom.
Yeah, that's some magical fairy tale kind of shit. It's perfectly just
and that
chef's kiss.
Since we're talking about breaking curses and shit, right? That's also sounding very fairy tale like. And that's what happened here.
This is how you break the curse.
This is how you break the curse, and I absolutely believe that is what's going to happen later when Toru has that whole situation where she will break, right? She'll come to her wit's end, right? And then because
will she find Akito?
Well, okay, that'd be pretty crazy. But because Yuki has if he has a similar thing where he then leads her out of that, that would also be something where he wouldn't be able to lead her out of that if he hadn't seen someone break in front of him,
right?
Like Akito, right? So I just, for similar situations to the whole Rin dynamic, you know, this episode was absolutely wonderful. I loved it. It brought in so much new information while at the same time
it coalesced old information into a picture.
Exactly, right. And that is something that's very important to happen. I could see someone looking at the structure of this story and theoretically being like, was this episode like needed because we'd already seen a lot of Yuki backstory? But it's like, no.
Or in some ways, they'd kind of already gotten the picture of this is what's going on.
Yeah, so then it's like, I've seen a lot of this already. What's the point? Well, you need to have it as that
see all
full
the dots
picture
connected and see
Exactly.
why this story. In some ways, this is something that's really special. I think this is an example of why the creator basically wanted to tell this type of story.
Sure,
is that there's something special about family, and I wanted to bring up this kind of imagery a little bit because this is my weird ass brain and how it works. Is I look for patterns, and sometimes I try to attach patterns to things that aren't really there.
Right, because who knows if it is there or not.
Because who knows if it's there or if it's
check.
intended or what have you.
Right.
But I use that to kind of cast a look back again at some of the things that I've, assumed to be a certain way and see if it matches up. And one of them is the idea that this story basically just came full circle. We just went from the present... We looped back to the past and connected things all the way back to the present here.
Yep.
And one of the things that did that, basically, was Yuki being put in a situation where he loses his family, picks up a twisted, dark, basically, situation that's a bastardization of family, tries to get out of it, can't.
Right.
Toru, in a completely opposite situation, loses her family. Rather than getting abandoned, loses her family.
Yeah.
We don't know what occupied her thoughts as much in those moments where she was in the tent.
Yeah.
Living there.
We don't, but I can imagine if she's living in the tent, that certainly didn't come from a good place.
Right.
Like it could come from a less unhealthy place,
It could be just a thing of where she's not really enjoying the time that she was with the grandpa and the other family.
But they definitely weren't a good example of family either.
Exactly.
To the point where she said, I'll brave the elements in a little tent rather than be in this place anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
The bastardization of family that she was in was not anywhere to the scale of the Akito situation. But she ended up finding, through the course of some serendipitous encounter, another place to call home. Some people there that are not perfect family members by any stretch of it, but she has, over the course of the story, kind of put them on a pedestal, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
To become this perfect image of what a family is, and thus she doesn't hold them really to any kind of... standard or threshold or what have you, because it's just better than what she had. And thus Yuki has done the same thing with Toru over the course of the story, and their journey is going to be about letting go of that a little bit and having real, genuine relationships where they're vulnerable. Vulnerable with those other people. Because Toru and Yuki have both been vulnerable at times.
Sure.
They've been vulnerable at times, but they don't follow up on it.
Right. Pretty much any of the scenes where Yuki turns into a rat, and Toru's there, that's those are on the list of like some of their best moments.
Yes. And also moments where Yuki is being vulnerable with Toru.
Right, exactly. And to the point where we even had him transform into a rat.
Just from...
When they weren't even nearby.
Oh. Just from seeing her get to be found again by her mother. Yep.
Which that was chef's kiss. I can't speak
magical.
enough to how much I love that.
Yeah, that made my heart fly. My heart sang from that.
But we also got something in this episode that where we basically got a flashback to a bunch of other scenes throughout the show leading up to this point, right? This is something that a lot of anime will do, And
You're not done talking about Yuki, right?
no.
Okay,
no.
cool. I have more to say about
Yeah.
Yuki. Yeah.
But this is probably it is definitely way up there on my on my list of favorite examples of that happening, because a lot of the time I feel like those sorts of like flashback compilations of like can be kind of done almost as like filling in gap time in the episode, you know.
Okay.
And then it's like, okay,
and also filling in the gaps of our minds of specific moments that we already have some contextual information on.
But I feel like those are like have that best effect when it's for conveying an emotion, and so it's bringing up the beats where we touched on that emotion throughout the show. That way you can sort of remember it in full, and then usually it's done with like a really pretty like background track, and then there you go, right? You're able to get that emotional context for a journey that this character has had over a long period of time.
Right. Yep.
And damn, did that work so well.
That worked
with
really
Yuki
well here. Yeah.
Like, holy
the stuff,
shit.
The stuff where he'd bump into all the people that he thought, well, in some ways could help him. And then the one person that he was first to interact with outside of Akito
was the one Soma person that did actually hate him.
The one person that actually, because of what he had, understood about how the Zodiac works, was being kept outside of the family.
Right, and then his mom kills herself.
Yeah, that hadn't happened, I think, at that point.
I'm not sure. It might have. I think there's a good chance that it did, because when the ladies talked about it, they said
it was a few
years ago. So
you're right.
Who knows the timing of it? But yeah, Kyo's childhood is also all sorts of fucked up for very different reasons, right? So,
and someone that he could have been best friends with, and in some ways has wanted to be friends with all this time since. I love the progression of their two characters being done in such a way that this is completely outside of any aspects of the romance arcs of this show. That's their emotional finale. Like for them, will be them being amazing friends.
Yep.
Fast friends, strong friends.
I loved so much that, and I think Yuki has like also like acknowledged this like in the past before, in the show, but that he was envious of Kyo, because there's being envious of Kyo now because you see all the people that are around him, right?
Yep.
But the idea of being envious of him back then, right? Because it's just additional context for the stuff that Yuki in response brought into the dynamic that he had with Kyo that kept it from being able to be a thing where they could be really close friends, right?
Yeah. Now, to be fair, that was a thing that was a progressive thing. He did not start off envying Kyo.
No, totally.
He came to envy him over the course of their journey getting to know each other.
Well, but even before he got to know him, when he would look and see him playing with Momiji and Hatsuharu and them, So yes, it didn't start when he met him the very first time. Of course not, right? It's just what a pretty orange color, right?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I have to bring up basically the way in which this episode structurally was done, because they basically took a moment in time and extrapolated out of that 23 minutes of anime.
Oh yeah.
Because it's worth it. And the progression we had from the last episode's cliffhanger needed to have all this setup in order to make the reveal be something that hits.
Right.
And to me, it's the most like tragically like beautiful and sad thing is that Toru meets this guy, right?
Right.
Over the course of season 1, gets to know him as kind of this weirdly ethereal, perfect, just kind of unique kind of boy. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Right.
Then she starts to see him change. She starts to see differences in who he is, and he also begins to see those things in him as well. They share lots of vulnerable moments. And the weird kind of romance thing that was going on fades away. Like, almost entirely. And it was so fascinating to, like, follow along with that and be like, what is going on with Yuki? And it was him coming to the realization of how he had basically created this false persona, not just for himself, but also for Toru. So how is he supposed to relate and connect with her if none of it is based on reality? So their relationship, if you will, just separates. They're obviously close still because they've shared a lot of experiences, but the foundation for a lot of it and what it was changes. And then we go through basically all the beach stuff, basically that whole thing, and that set up basically the foundation for a lot of this. Like their moment together, their really awkward moment together alone. And then all this stuff of him basically passing...
Which one?
The one that seemed like it could be a kiss, but it didn't.
The moment on the beach?
I'm pretty sure that was either by the beach or it was by the bridge.
Well, because there's... Oh yeah, no, it was probably on the beach then, right? Because they've had
it was the beach,
right? Okay, because like there are a few moments that I think of where there were like very particular moments, like on the stairs, at the beach, but not on the beach when like Yuki was lying on the sofa, you know, and
So let me continue here. The reveal basically being that he has at this point understood just enough that he sees her as a mother, basically,
right.
That completely changes a whole lot of things of their relationship dynamic, but it also makes so much sense as to why then he would essentially pass on the romance angle of things.
Yep, because of course he would.
Well, right, because what he loved about her wasn't actually who she is.
Right.
It's about what he needed.
Right. When it comes right down to it, she's not his mother,
but she is very motherly.
She is very motherly, and he can get some of those emotional needs met that he had been starved for since childhood.
But he does need to see her for who she is.
But yeah, exactly. Right. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And that's what's so sad and beautiful about this is that in some ways Toru has, because of her mother, kind of transformed into that version of herself a little bit. And maybe to also make herself feel like she's enough, and because she doesn't have that mother figure.
And how much of that is like a prince, like Yuki's prince thing, versus just who she actually is, right? In a similar way with Yuki's prince thing, the prince persona could be actually who Yuki ends up being, right? It doesn't have to be a fake thing. That's entirely the choice of the person who's putting on the persona. But Toru has never gotten to the point where she's actually needed to decide whether it was. And that's what the breaking point will probably end up being is, okay,
it could be like a moment of freedom. It doesn't have to be just pure pain. But to put this in perspective here, Yuki's moment of freedom was kind of forced by the pain. The way they described it was so well written. The idea that he's like, I couldn't tell whether I wanted to hurt myself or just run away from that pain.
Right.
Because that's just basic fear. The idea that you're encountering a thing that you don't fully understand, so you just run, is actually a good survival instinct. Toru, it's actually good sometimes to, if you have a situation that you don't feel adequately prepared for, you don't have to fight it, and you don't have to try and change it into something that's good. You can be like, no, I can't handle this. I'm gonna run from that. That's okay.
So a lot of the times when people talk about fear responses, they mention fight or flight. Right?
Yeah.
But there is another one, freeze.
Yes.
And that is what Yuki, no pun intended.
No pun intended at all.
Had been doing this entire time because he didn't see there as being an alternative, right? So he ran, right?
Yeah.
There you go. And that is a fantastic decision to make, much better than freezing, right? Over the course of the show, we've gotten it to the point where he has run, and now maybe he feels a bit more comfortable fighting.
Yeah.
Right? And we see that when he stands up to Akito, when they have those conversations, right? And Yuki's able to hold his own ground. Akito does all his usual stuff, and it's not working, right?
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to see. But now Toru needs to have that kind of experience.
Yeah.
And
she's had light versions
She's
of it.
had light bits of like touching on it, right?
Yeah.
But she has not been forced to do it yet. And because this is a rut that has been dug pretty consistently over a very long period of time.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to get out of it, right?
And there's nice flowers around that rut, so you don't want to fill them in because you might you might clog the flowers
Sure.
and they'll die.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like you've crafted a really nice, garden around it. And it's like
It's a very pretty
it's
rut.
very pretty rut,
Yeah,
but it was a rut.
Yep.
And I see this beautiful, like, ever evolving spiral here within the story of Toru eventually needing someone that has, in some ways, over the course of the season, adopted some of those aspects of Toru's mother persona into himself to, in some ways, be
Sure, yeah.
a, not literal mother, but a support kind of
Yep.
system in some ways for somebody here, but also needing to, manage his own feelings and stuff. I
Right.
legitimately think Yuki could, at some point before this show ends, be a mother of sorts.
I
For
can totally
Toru.
see that. It's
Yeah.
it's like poetry. It rhymes.
It's like poetry. It rhymes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, It's yeah, and even the whole reveal that like what Yuki wanted from Toru was a mother, right?
Yeah.
You really needed this whole episode to give context for that because words carry different meanings to different people,
True.
right?
Yeah.
And if we were to just have this episode start where the other one left off, and Yuki just says, "I always wanted a mother," right? We might kind of get it. But it wouldn't have nearly the same impact, right? As being able to see all of the different signs and hurts and pains along the way and where this need was not being met, and so that then when he says it at the end, we're like, yep, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is really important and powerful about this is that anytime you have a love triangle in a story, that can be a very tough thing to deal with because it can give you a lot of benefit along the way because there can be that tension of like, oh, who's going to end up with who?
Yeah.
But as far as the resolution, it can be very difficult to do it in a satisfying way
Yeah.
because, well, about half your audience probably will have been cheering for the losing side, right? Hopefully, otherwise it's not much of a love triangle, right? It's just a, then it's just a one-sided joke,
Yeah, in some ways, I think that this episode killed any
no.
aspects. Like
Yes,
if there were any like corpseified remains of a love triangle.
Yeah, it absolutely did that.
Right.
And it's very important that it does that because you want to
Triple
be able
tapped.
you're right, it triple tapped it. It's dead and done and gone. But you need to have that kind of alternative relationship dynamic firmly established
Right.
and why it's good and healthy and something to also be cheered for.
Yes.
Even if it's not romance. Because
Yes.
otherwise you end up just getting into a situation where it's like, well, I guess this character, they just lose. And,
Yeah,
you know.
there's such a thing as love that goes beyond romantic love.
Exactly.
God.
And unfortunately, that's not gotten into nearly as much as I would like
Same.
in stories in general
Same.
and anime in particular.
Oh,
so
yeah.
so having this happen where we're able to get this and we can have a truly wondrous moment at the end where maybe even Yuki, if we were to put a different moniker on it, is the prince for Toru that comes in and saves her, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily have to have romantic connotations.
Right. I unironically think that it's the joke of it will be that it's going to be the prince and the monster rather than
sure.
being that the prince needs to slay the monster. It's that both of them look at
Right.
each other and go, lock elbow arms,
Right.
and then turn to their left and their right respectively, and basically just flank her. And
Yeah.
then they're like, all right.
The prince comes up to the palace, and sees the dragon or the monster, and is like, "The princess is in there. Indeed, you're protecting her. Indeed, good job.
Good job. Yeah.
Right, like-
Fist bump. Yeah. I'll go take the front lines.
Right.
If anything gets past me, you got that, right? It's like, yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah.
And it's like, all right, don't die on me, you
Right.
fucking idiot.
Like
It's
I'm
yeah,
almost
all right.
picturing like some
gonna
Arlong
go.
Park straw hats going in and like
on an emotional level.
on an emotional level, and maybe that was brought about in some part by the hat
Sure.
being put on the lost crying girl. I don't know.
Well,
but
there's a bunch of symbolism I want to get to before we get into the Akito stuff, but okay. The circle spiral thing, why I brought that up is because, well, there's the zodiacs ringed around God. So that's one other aspect there. The idea that we have the two wholesome parents, literally the only two wholesome parents.
Yeah.
Having the connection point of the hat potentially going through all of them.
Kazuma and Toru's mom, yeah.
Yeah. Did you see that? Kind of closing and it kind of forming the typical nuclear family structure as well.
Oh, yeah. You've got the example of the dad and the example of the mom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that hat being a symbol basically of just genuine love and empathy being passed around through the bits there, but also the order in which basically it originated from Kyo, then passed to Yuki, and then Yuki stewards it just enough to basically pass that on to Toru.
Right. Caleb, I just realized there was a point in a reaction a few episodes ago where we were like, you know what really sucks?
What?
Is that Yuki doesn't have a good parental figure in his life.
Did we say that?
I know. Okay, I know I brought it up. I can't remember how strongly like you responded, to it or whatever. But because it was like, Kyo has Kazuma, and Kazuma is just fantastic. But then Yuki, the best he has is Shigure, who is not a parent, right? Like, not at all.
Even who Shigure is not a parent.
Exactly. And who knows? Maybe Shigure is kind of fulfilling that dad role, but like
Well, I have some Akito stuff to talk about because I want to bring up the ways in which they're going to probably parallel again the issues with Akito, because I think they blew the lid on some Akito stuff like wide open here.
Yeah.
Okay, if Akito suffered a form of abuse, right?
Yeah.
It would then stand to reason that in order for Akito to have catharsis with, put this into a perspective here, the only other person he would see. Think about this.
Yep.
From Yuki's perspective, he's trapped with Akito, right?
But Akito is also trapped with Yuki.
Akito is also trapped with Yuki.
Right.
Why is that? I think that what we are establishing here is that there's a very, very, very small possibility that Akito is intentionally separated from abusive parents.
Oh, okay.
Now, run with me on this here.
All right.
The parents could have been the one that did the separating because he's the chosen one or what have you.
Sure, yeah.
But I actually am getting the vibe more and more that old bitch granny is maybe one of the ones that's more kind of stewarding that kind of aspect of Akito. You're special. You're perfect here. You're going to be the blah, 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 blah. But because we basically have confirmed at this point that Akito is not some immortal being.
Right.
Like, he aged. Like, we saw, like, that is basically the same age as Yuki, and that's probably
and there was a reference to the previous head of the family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, what if the previous head of the family was, like Akito's, like, father, for instance.
Okay.
Or mother, or what have you. So, it's one of the parent figures, or what have you.
Gotcha. Maybe it's that mysterious black-haired lady that we saw,
Sure. We have a situation where the parents are, in Akito's life, right?
Sure.
Akito is fine. Akito is maybe going through a similar situation with Yuki in that he was, like, sent here and it's like, all right, cool. You're going to basically become the new head of the family.
Right.
This is going to be your next step here, destiny. And it's not, thrilled about it, but it's like, okay, cool. And then it's like, you get a friend brought to you every day because you're the head of the family. And it's like, oh, cool. I'll get to be best friends with them. This will be wonderful.
We have toys and we play together and it's great.
Something happened that was outside of Yuki's entire bounds.
Right.
But there's only one character that we saw directly interacting with Akito that had nothing to do with this situation. And that's fucking Shigure. Shigure was seen comforting Akito.
Right.
Now.
Yeah. So
why?
Right. So there's a
why?
So I wanna come back to this point from the reverse direction.
Go for it. Yeah.
So we can see that Akito changed. He was violently, right? And it seemed to be more or less a singular event, right?
Oh yeah. There was no build up to it.
Yeah, like he had the little spats or fits, but that could just be a mildly spoiled child.
That's just a child,
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So there was something traumatic that happened, right? What was that?
What was that?
Now, I would posit, because we have gotten a lot of parallels between Akito and Yuki, as far as their situations
Yes.
leading up to this in the show, that the things that we see from Yuki this episode could be very similar to the things that Akito was experiencing.
Maybe. Yep.
Akito, locked in a room, basically. Maybe not locked, but, like, sequestered into an area, right, where he doesn't really get much contact.
No.
That would have the similar conflicts and situations that Yuki would have of, why did my parents essentially abandon me here?
Yeah.
Potentially even sell me off to the Soma estate or whatever, however that works, right?
Right.
That's something where if Akito is going to bring up these things to Yuki as ammo that he shoots at Yuki, that means that it was first swirling around in his own head.
And it was something that he used as catharsis to overcome the similar feelings that he was dealing with in regards to that stuff. Yeah.
Whether it's because the abuse came from his externals or potentially internals of having some set of thoughts that basically circulate around in there, and because he doesn't have anyone to really talk to about it, it self-destructs in there. I could totally see that being something that could happen. Or if it's something where Shigure went psycho on him or something like that, who knows, right?
Well, I have some theories.
Yeah?
I have some theories.
Yeah, what you thinking?
So, okay. Shigure is, he's like 10 years older than the trio, right?
Right.
Akito seems to be around the same age as Yuki. I would say that Akito might be a little bit older. Maybe.
Which makes it interesting because then at the time when he would have been comforting Akito, he would have been like a teenager.
He would have been a teenager.
Which is curious.
Yeah, I would say that he's probably like a third year in high school at that time or something like that. But I want to throw out some ideas here. One, Akito very much has a complex. Let me kind of break this down a little bit.
I definitely agree with that one.
No, yeah, but let me break this down a little bit. Akito vehemently hates relationships.
Okay,
But it's more than that. Akito very much hates women in relationships.
That's true. That was established pretty recently.
It's way more one-sided in that regard.
That's a good point.
I think that Akito has just somewhere in the wings, in the background, never necessarily saw her, but we might have one of the worst mothers secretly in the whole anything, and we haven't met her yet.
But
Okay, now roll with me on this here. If Yuki's thing is about seeing someone too much as a mother when that's not really who they are, Akito might have had the negative thing of where, I have suffered whatever the cause was of basically what the worst versions of a mother are.
Right. So, yeah, I think it's...
Okay. Just basically saying that if we looked at Akito's type of abuse that he gives to Yuki, that is something that seems to be very specifically you're worthless. All the kinds of things that feel like Yuki's mother was subconsciously communicating to Yuki by her actions, not really as much as... Her words did encompass a lot of that stuff, but it felt eerily familiar when they were, put in the same episode right next to each other.
Right, there was the facade that Yuki's mom would put up of, eventually, I'll come get you, right? Yeah, it's... Right. So one of the other things that I think is very telling is why does Akito react so negatively to Toru? Now, yes, we have had it established recently that he has a big problem with women. Okay, cool. We also had it established recently, right about the same time that it was established that he had a problem with women. Same episode, actually. Yeah. Why Rin hates Toru.
Yes.
And it's because, not because there's something about Toru that she just vehemently despises with every fiber of her being.
Right.
But because it's something that she actually desires so much, but she doesn't believe she can trust.
Yeah.
Right? If Akito had a similar situation to Yuki, which the results we can see are very similar, of being sort of sent away, right? And if he does have a mom, regardless of whether she was abusive or not, but if she was abusive, then that would make it even worse. Versus just the absent, go away from me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then it would make sense that when Toru shows up and is being this wonderful maternal figure for Yuki, but she's not around Akito.
Right.
In a potentially similar way that Yuki ended up turning bitter towards Kyo because he sees what Kyo has from like the car looking at the kids playing and stuff, that Akito would get a very similar thing. Take that and combine it with the fact that Akito has no one who will tell him no, right? Because he's the head of the family, right? Any thoughts that he has are treated as, you know, the due of the gods, law, you know, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would think that, like, if I were to put myself in Akito's situation, I would start to get very negative about myself to try and compensate for the fact that I didn't have anyone like that external to me. Right?
So you then need to expel that externally onto something or just into the ether or on someone if you're really, like, you have no empathy for, you know,
to take power back into myself.
Yes.
If you have people that are constantly saying you're the best, and it has nothing to do with what you do, and you don't have any choice in the matter, you could feel like a prisoner in that regard. And so then if you're trying to take control back so that you have agency, so that if you are pathetic or potentially good or whatever, you feel that that is something that is earned, that is truly you, not just something that people ascribe to you, that really, if it was just being ascribed to you, that'd be kind of worthless, right? There's a whole mess of
bag of cats,
a bag of cats that you can get into with the whole idea of if you're constantly being praised, then the praise means nothing, and then that becomes
like a curse.
It becomes like a curse because then it's all just a reminder that you have done nothing to earn anything. You have not gotten any actual positive reinforcement. And if you did, you don't trust it, right?
And thus, then you are worthless in your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot about what Akito seems to be in the past stuff, basically, where a lot of it seemed too extreme. And a lot of it felt like it had to be some form of expressed, internalized self-hatred.
Right.
And
the words were too precise to just be random musings. You know?
And that's where this episode almost feels like it's like, we're confirming that. Just a little bit. Not in its entirety, because there might be some harder external circumstances, especially given that I would say, at the very least, I don't want to assume anything negative about Shigure's involvement with Akito, but the idea that, one, Shigure was comforting Akito, I believe, before Akito snapped.
Right.
And that's very important here. I think that's extremely important in terms of a timing causal relationship.
If we were told that Shigure comforted Akito after he snapped, that would have a completely different meaning.
Yes.
That would be very hard for me to see that in a negative light, right? Yes. But we don't hear about anything of it after he snaps. So, and we know that Shigure has been trying to make Akito self-destruct in the present. Why would that need to have started recently? That could have started a long time ago.
Right, exactly.
And if it's something where Shigure's dealing with, say, a previous head of the family, and Akito is now the new incarnation of that god being or whatever, or maybe did something horrible to Shigure, and now Shigure's like, who cares? You might, one, be their direct spawn, like their child or something, but two, you are a vessel for the same spirit, so I will take out my vengeance on you.
I will basically get vengeance on them through you. Sorry, get fucked, Akito.
Right, that could get all kinds of fucked.
But that's weird then, because then Akito comforting... Shigure comforting Akito.
I would say that's the ultimate way to get revenge, right? Because Shigure's whole thing is that Akito can't know that I'm against him, right? Because if he does, he's the head of the family, he'll have me gone, right? So because if you think about it, if the worst pain that you can feel is not actually from someone who just absolutely hates your guts, but it's from someone who you get vulnerable with, right? Sure. And then there's that betrayal, then it totally makes sense that Shigure would try and take that tactic. But also, something that I want to bring up is that when Akito finally snaps, right, the things that he says is actually very telling. At the beginning, he says, I am worthless, this world is all darkness and things like that, right? And then he brings Yuki into it and says, you are that as well, right? Basically
you will stay in this darkness forever.
With
There's no
me.
salvation,
Right. Yeah. But that's the thing of I feel this way. here's this person that I do everything with. We play together. They are my
sharing this with me.
Right, sharing this with me. But I still feel really bad. In fact, no, be beneath me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that
there was
way,
a progression towards basically the demonization and the condescension.
But it didn't start that way.
Yeah.
And that goes to show that it was something that Akito had as a problem within himself that then he starts to take out on Yuki.
Yeah.
So
Holy shit.
I love how this episode was just went down.
And all this basically feels to me like a beautiful circle again, where what's the final connection point there? Well, it's Akito and Toru. Akito and Toru need to basically have that connection point at the end where the darkness is brought up to the surface.
Yep.
And they basically come to Akito in that darkness and are just there. So, they don't need to do anything grand. It doesn't need to be some gigantic exorcism ritual event or what have you. They don't need to Kamehameha wave the power of love and friendship into Akito.
And it's not going to be Uo showing up with a lead pipe, you know?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's going to be I have a vision more of like the Azula breakdown, just kind of letting it all out, but it's not as cold. It's more of a, we built up to this. Toru has experienced something similar to this. And then it's who are the people that are going to be nearby when this happens? Yeah. I feel like they basically foreshadowed the rest of the story.
You know what I think it might be?
Yeah.
Is that Akito's going to see Toru break. And he's going to...
See? What do you mean by see?
So, I'll explain.
Yeah.
So he sees her break, and then he basically is like, see, I was right. Women are vile, you're vile. I was always telling them that you are actually like evil and twisted and all of that stuff, right? And now it's finally on display for the whole world to see. I was right. Can I get some applause, right? And then, in the midst of that, because that happens, then he basically allows himself to perceive what is truly happening, right? Because it's not the front. He's finally seeing the real Toru and all of that. And then in the midst of that, Toru ends up basically doing the thing that he wasn't able to do. The people come to her and help her, and she is able to recover from that breaking point.
Yeah.
And then he's like, wait,
that's illegal.
That's illegal,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because if he were to see Toru put just a strong face on something like that, right? He wouldn't buy it, he wouldn't believe it, he wouldn't see it as having any value because he sees Toru as just being completely fake, right?
Yeah.
But
and there's a part of that that's right.
Yep,
obviously,
totally,
it's not
right?
even like remotely true in the absolute sense.
Right, but it's that Toru does have limits. She's not addressing the fact that she is a person,
that has needs.
That has needs, right?
Yep.
And that's the thing that probably wasn't ever really addressed for Akito because he wasn't a person. He's a god or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So naturally, he's going to have all sorts of issues with that. And then that's how it ends up being resolved, right?
God.
Because... I feel like in stories like this, it can be very easy to get into the trap of where you do try and have it be some sort of Kamehameha or whatever, because otherwise, how do you explain it resolving now as opposed to earlier or later? It could feel kind of arbitrary, and you don't want that, right?
No, because you need our characters to change
exactly.
so that they're equipped to...
Right, and it's not just how do you feel about me, wait 26 episodes and check again, right? Like that's not going to cut it, right? So you have it be something where he sees someone who truly does remind him of himself, right? Which is kind of the ultimate thing that you want with your main characters anyways, is to show those parallels between them and the antagonist. And while Yuki is a main character and we see the parallels between him and Akito, what would be even crazier is if they took the characters that seem so completely opposite, Akito and Toru, and then showed how they're maybe very similar, and then that's how Akito...
Yeah, I never was trying to say that they're opposites in that they have no similarities. I was trying to bring up the idea that they're darkness and light, meaning that they need to meet so that they can have basically a collision of their aspects of this story about love and family and pain, trauma, and
it'll be an emotional anime energy blast battle, and it'll be great. Simplifies it too much.
But the fact that if we want to stay in the theory crafting state for just a little bit, the fact that Shigure is kind of the last member now of the household that the story is primarily revolved around, without really a backstory at this point. Because in some ways, we kind of have a bit of that with Akito now.
We do. Yep.
Like,
it's not from Akito's perspective.
It's not from Akito's perspective, so we're going to get more later.
It's a lot of info.
But it's a lot of info, and the fact that Shigure is now connected to all these points, and we know he's a manipulator, we know he's a schemer, we know he has plans, we know he's working behind the scenes, and we know that he was given actual screen time in this episode
where it seems like he absolutely is irrelevant.
Yeah. So it's like, holy shit,
I
what did he do?
I think Shigure is like the secret bonus boss, you know?
In some ways, I think you're right, but I think the bonus boss aspect of it is that Shigure is capitalizing on a situation rather than the instigator of the situation. It's the same way in which we have people in the story who very much in the parental side of things kind of took advantage of their kids, basically.
Yes.
And Shigure, in this instance, feels like he's being like an older brother or like an older cousin that kind of comes in and is like, they're there. It's okay. It's going to be okay. But has completely like this, but like this isn't exactly the only reason why I'm here.
Well, and I believe in the episode, it was even the thing that was shown before Akito snapped. Like,
we just said that.
No, like directly before.
Oh, it was, it was literally right before.
And even though the phrasing was, then one day Akito snapped, right? So it's not like,
there's no causal
he
link.
Then talked to Shigure and immediately he flipped out, you know.
But yes, there is that tickling, if you will.
Yeah.
Tickle their balls a little bit, like give it a little bit of an inkling, if you will.
So this reminds me of like a lot of like classic literature revenge stories where there's the person who does the bad thing, and it's like, okay, they shouldn't have done that, right? You know, the Count of Monte Cristo kind of a thing where it's like, you framed someone for murder or killed people or whatever. It's obviously that's really bad, right?
Right.
But then the truly like almost
dead inside,
almost irredeemable like person is the person that goes so far into and now I will destroy you and your soul is forfeit. Like you know, I will take everything that you are and crush it in the most vile way possible. That's actually kind of like the true evil in the story, you know. Not necessarily the person, but that.
Okay, in some ways, the way that works to me, there's a very clear like way in which this kind of works, is basically that on some level, Akito being the head of the family at all was something Shigure was not cool with, basically. Like something that I think that was just like no. Like so I from my perspective,
okay,
I can't see Shigure as evil. I can see him as being irredeemably manipulative.
Sure.
But the idea in that this child is going to become, or is, from whatever reasons or why or what have you, the next head of the family, feels wrong from my perspective. Akito, I feel like, should have been at the very least like a teenager. Should have been at the very least older to kind of bear that burden.
Even if he's the next projected head, where are his parents? Like who's the previous head? Did they just who's what happened to them?
Who's around supporting Akito?
Yeah.
Well, we see in this situation, in this episode, that we have two sides of it. We have Yuki being just the person nearby, which, okay, cool. But the other person is Shigure, giving basically the Akito is crying. Right. He's holding Akito, giving basically the there kind of thing, at least on the surface.
Right.
But the idea that Shigure, in his present goal right now, is to basically disseminate the curse.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like on the surface. But there is inklings of some kind of getting back at Akito.
Right. It almost feels like less about to him. It's not as much about breaking the curse as it is just destroying Akito.
But that's the thing. Akito there is no reason, in the way that they've set this up thus far, and I've been searching for it. There's no reason at this point why Shigure should hate Akito with just a singular focus.
Right, exactly.
There has to be something behind that.
That is not tied to Akito as a person.
Right.
It's more tied to the fact that he is the god or whatever.
Right. And the people that I would most logically assume to make Akito the next head of the family is something that would be very much familial. Something that would be passed down.
Yeah.
So a parent, if you will.
Hence why I think the dark-haired lady is Akito's mom.
Right. So if this is basically some kind of way of getting back at them,
sure, yeah,
then why is Shigure going after the child?
Well, Count of Monte Cristo stuff, right?
Yes, exactly. Count of Monte Cristo stuff.
You get back at Mondego and Mercedes by going after Albert, not by going after them. You do that later.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, what if the words that Akito uses are just Shigure's words?
Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see that.
I mean, that crying of Akito doesn't have to be I'm crying because, I've lost something. I'm crying because my parents died, because I'm all alone, because I'm not I'm not able to make friends with Yuki. I don't, all kinds of things, reasons
no one else
kids
will
could cry.
talk to me,
But then...
do they all hate me?
Right. Yeah. And, oh my god, if it's the situation where Shigure is the originator of the thing that then scarred Yuki...
Right. Yep.
Holy shit.
Because the thing is that even if this is one of the things that I think is so beautiful about this, is that you don't need to get back to the originator of all of it in an absolute sense.
True.
Because Shigure, let's say it's something that the previous head of the family did, and now Shigure is getting his revenge. Cool.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that being a thing where Shigure is just doing this as I'll get back at you. Yeah.
And so then it's not even about, because Shigure could be like, well, I didn't start it. And it's like, sure, but you're perpetuating it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the lesson that the other characters, even potentially Akito, might end up learning, that possibly Shigure isn't able to learn.
Yeah.
Because he's stewed on this too long, right?
He's older.
He's older. He's set in his ways. He's had his whole,
a little bit with
he's
the
had his
high
whole
schoolers
existence
that
kind of revolve around this,
That also fits with the high schoolers upending the established order through the Soma family estate and what have you, except for the fact that Shigure is also kind of doing that as well.
He's helping them, but
he's playing like both sides, if you will.
Right, but since he's using the kids as chess pieces, right?
Right, and that's the classic high fantasy thing where it's actually been the mentor all along who has been manipulating things.
Right.
And then by the end of the story, we'll probably get Shigure's backstory as well, and it'll be this thing of where it's like, oh, I absolutely see why you did this. And then at that point, that's where I think it has to be apparent at that point, is that we have to end it with an adult, basically. Some kind of representative of the established order, which then makes sense to have then in this episode introducing the idea that, the previous head of the house. So there you go. That's the originator. That's the OG thing where they'll probably pass the buck entirely onto, even though every character made mistakes going through their own emotional journeys to get to this point.
We get Shigure's backstory of the stuff that they did or something like that, or And the last thing on the Shigure versus Akito deal is that in Akito's situation, he's someone who has done a lot of messed up things, and he hasn't had a Toru, right? He hasn't had someone that helps him in that way. In Shigure's case, the reason why I think it would be in a way so much more messed up is because he's actively in the situation where he is seeing and also helping foster this wonderful healing process in these kids, right?
Okay.
That where the demand for the healing process, the hurt that was caused, is from the same, source essentially as where you got your hurt. Right?
Sure.
but
Sure.
you're still going to have that be your sacrificial lamb, basically, for
Right.
your revenge, right?
Because the ends justify the means.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. Yeah, I definitely feel like Shigure is not.
He's not trustworthy, but like, who knows what his actual like.
Right. I definitely don't see him as evil, but he does call himself the worst. And one of the things that is rather common, I would say, of people that are habitual liars and schemers in that regard, and this is something that is in some ways an aspect of abusers as well, is that they will vent out a little bit of their own guilt and frustration through moments of like minor honesty and like little bits there
That's
where they're
also kind of to manipulate people.
that's also kind of to manipulate people.
Yeah.
So Akito 100% does this.
Yes.
But I think Shigure kind of does this with little things as well, where it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, you kind of do stink. Like there's this little aspects about
Right.
you where it's like,
This dog hasn't been bathed in a while.
yeah, this dog needs to go take a bath.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been cooped up in like a closet, not
Right.
writing,
Like
for too long.
Is this dog the wholesome, golden retriever or whatever that's like, yes, I am your best friend? Or is this like the
kick,
also abused
scrappy
kick
mutt
that's
that-
like an attack dog that's gone a bit wild.
Yeah, and yet has to pretend to basically be okay with their weird family that they've got set up.
Right.
Even though they're like, I can do this as long as I maintain that my frustration is not in this house. It is focused elsewhere.
Right. I'm just gonna sort of chew on this bone in the corner. Yeah.
I definitely feel like the circle will be the whole family being there being a form of restitution, there being a form of basically a new path that they'll set things on. And I very much am excited for the way in which they'll deliver the explanations in a fuller sense for Akito and by extension Shigure, because this episode basically promised us that. But not just that, it promised us in some ways that it will be handled in such a way that we will actually see a humanization of Akito.
Right, because
which
we already
blows my mind.
Right, because we already saw that, right? We saw how Akito started, and he was a fairly normal boy.
Yeah.
Right? Had his issues, but normal kid issues, right?
Normal kid issues, yeah. But okay, Yuki, you have said it. You have acknowledged basically
Way
how
to
wonderful
fucking go.
Toru has been for you, but how you have also elevated her to the status. I love that he called it like the sky, because it's also something that's above him and envelops him.
Sure.
And it's everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
Because he called it in the sky in relation to the close but always far away. I love that as well. But I feel like that's a thing that almost gets at another thing that I'm like, yes, that's kind of obvious, but like the other aspect is that Yuki, Toru is not a state of like the world. Toru is a flawed, regular person just like you.
The sky is almost, it's nature. It's almost a force of nature.
It's in some ways a force that protects the earth from all kinds of other things.
The metaphor will definitely break down.
Yeah, it breaks down a little
far.
bit. I'm taking it a bit too far. That's true.
But that was a lot of poetry there.
And he told all this to his boy, his new best friend.
Exactly.
This is so great.
And the fact that he is being open with someone else about this, I think, is one of the things that is super important.
Yeah.
Because that shows that he is accepting it, right? Like, because everyone will have their different perspectives on things, right?
Yes.
And just because it might not be the most helpful for them or for the people around them or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to change, right?
True.
But,
Yeah.
where you really get into the weeds is when it's not... When you have that perspective, but you don't accept that perspective. You're
at war with
You're
yourself.
at war with yourself and trying to reject it and all, and that just doesn't go well.
Oh, God.
Right?
You know what's so fun about that is literally the state that most everyone is in at any given point in time. And it's just at how much level of, like, acceptance are we okay with making little bits of progress in that?
Right,
and
exactly.
not just pretending like you're not doing that.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of artistry, with regards to creatives, get into basically that eternal conundrum.
Right. The human heart in conflict with itself is the only thing worth writing
telling.
about.
Yeah.
So, Yep.
Because that's literally human nature. So.
Exactly.
All
And
right.
that's why we do these stories. So we can
so
we can try and figure things
That's why
out.
we gush about contradictions within characters.
Yeah.
That's why we gush about characters like actually changing, because it's not that they're going from one character to an entirely new character. It's that we're seeing meaningful progress.
Yeah, it's not that they're suddenly in a state where they're
becoming.
perfect.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's that they're better than they were yesterday.
Or they're just not exactly who they were yesterday.
Right, exactly. Better can mean just about anything depending on what kind of context you apply it to. But
yeah, Griffith was better than he was, before the eclipse. But
from a
certain point of view, All right, but okay, God, I can't. This show can't keep getting away.
I know,
with this.
right? And it's straight up this show has mastered the art of all right, we'll give them just a little bit of wholesomeness, but never let it last too long. Because with the previous episode, I was kind of expecting this next episode to be another wholesome one, but at the same time, it's like, what was I thinking? This is Fruits Basket. Well, that's real estate that's being used up. No, yeah, there's this much emotional damage that Fruits Basket wants to get across, right? You have to space that out with the wholesome, uplifting moments. So, with the amount of episodes that we have and the amount of hard stuff that we want to have, let's see, how do we zone this out like some city planner or whatever and then we'll have a park here and then we'll have whatever here.
I have to experience the source material after we complete this anime, because I have to go through it again on my own speed and soak in specific moments and stuff. And I'm sure that there's also just the aspect of where I'll just be getting more of it, because animes are adaptations, so therefore there's going to be little things cut here and there, and also then original stuff as well. But this backstory was some shit,
and we didn't actually get that much new stuff.
No, not really.
And yet,
no, we just connected a whole bunch of dots.
Yep.
So all right, Fruits Basket, fuck you. I love you. Thank you.
Right.
So, all right. Y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there. All this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
next time.
And you guys are insane for going through all this discussion.
Yeah,
to the end
it's
here.
for real.
So you're the real one. Yeah, there we go.